Hey, everybody. I'm Glenn Crooks along with Matty Lawrence. We are your English radio commentary team, the New York City FC Network. And it's a day of celebration. This is the home opener. New York City playing host to the Montreal Impact. No, CF Montreal. It's Club de Football Montreal. Just thought I'd throw that out there. In my email archives, I've kept at Montreal Impact where I slide everything in. It's just easier for me, Matty. Hey, it is a big day. This celebration is the unveiling of a championship banner, which begins with ceremonies at 12:40. So if you happen to be listening to this and watching this and you are coming to the game, they're encouraging supporters to get in by 12:30 if you can, with the ceremonies beginning at 12:40. It's been an interesting weather day. When I got here, Matty, I got here pretty early, about 8:30. In time for the eggs with the pico de gallo. It was really good. And it was raining heavily, downpour. And as much of the field that could be covered with that, what they usually cover the baseball diamond here at Yankee Stadium, was covered. And then slowly I watched it turn to snow. And it's a pretty steady snow right now. You know,
it is, but it's warm enough, so it's not settling, is it, particularly? So I think it'll be good conditions. It's not too cold, obviously not too warm, and there'll be a nice sort of greasy surface as well. Maybe not quite so nice for the goalkeepers, but certainly for the players. The ball's going to zip over the surface. It looks good out there, and the pitch looks pretty nice too.
So that's what's set up for the game against Montreal. Before we get to that, and we are today celebrating the MLS Cup championship, Matty, and it was that kind of season that you typically get with the team that wins the MLS Cup. It's never great from start to finish. There's always the rough patches. But if you look back, what stands out to you about the season?
About this season or about last season?
No, about last season.
About last season.
Just to reflect on the championship season one more time before we just...
I think the fact of having to go away from home for the playoffs and being mentally tough to go to places like New England and getting results and going through the amount of penalty shootouts that they went through. It's not so much the quality of the play, it's the togetherness of the team. And I think the mental toughness, the mental strength to go away to all those teams and keep winning on the road. And even when it went down to the penalty shootouts, somebody who stands out for me is Alex Carlins, somebody who is a centre half, not a natural goal scorer, but stood up and was counted when it was needed and just smashed the ball straight down the middle, hit it hard, hit it true. So for me, that, as I say, not the technical quality, just that, as I say, the togetherness that has happened because of Ronny Deila as well. We can't take anything away from Ronny Deila. He's done that. He has bred that team's spirit. It starts on the training ground. I think when everyone has to eat together. Starts at the hotels on away trips. Everybody has to eat together. Not just the players, not just the coaching staff, anybody who's there, except us. Obviously, we don't get invited.
It was funny to run into sporting director David Lee having a chat, and he said, "Oh, I got to go. I'm going to get fined if I don't get to dinner on time."
And it's great.
So I guess the coach gets to find the sporting director if he's not there.
Exactly, and it's great that they move about as well. So there's not little cliques made up of the tables. Everybody moves around over every away trip. I think that's a big part of it. Any good team that I've played in has a good team spirit and a good togetherness. Of course, you need good players. Of course, Castellanos stands out last season. But the one thing is just the ultimate togetherness and team spirit of everybody involved.
All right. Well, it helped lead to an MLS Cup, the first in the 7 years of the franchise. We're in our 8th season now with New York City FC. And this trend, which we've documented of a difficult start, it has begun. New York City is no wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw through 2 matches. Of the previous 7 winners of the MLS Cup, they opened the next 5 games of the next season with no more than 1 victory, except for the Seattle Sounders, who got 2 of their first 5. So it's... it's one of those things that, it's, I don't think we can say it's made up. I mean, it's reality. There's that struggle coming back and getting off to the good start.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's a statistic, but it's one that is incredibly relevant. Of course, teams have to deal with the Champions League. Of course, teams that have won something, only the really good teams keep winning and winning and winning. And we also know in MLS, it doesn't matter if you have a bad 10-game start or 15-game start. It's all about the playoffs, and it's all about playing well as you approach the playoffs. And let's not forget what NYCFC have been through as well as a team. Been to Florida, Mexico, Costa Rica, LA, Vancouver, NYC, Hartford. The amount of traveling they've done has made things very difficult. It's been a tough, first two games, away at Galaxy and away at Vancouver. And look, the Vancouver game, Vancouver tried for a 0-0. It wasn't even a game of football. There was only one team playing. Vancouver were just sat there, and granted, you have to break them down, and NYCFC didn't. But it's been a tough start. Hopefully,
I watched that game again last night, the Vancouver game, and you're right. I mean, it was interesting that how Vancouver went about it, and how well New York City played at times. I mean, you went through it, and it looked pretty good. But then you go to CONCACAF Champions League. They're coming off the first leg win in the quarterfinal against Comunicaciones, and they're going to Guatemala for a match on Tuesday, which we will carry here on the New York City FC Network. The pleasure to go to Guatemala for my first time, Matty, and we'll see how that goes, what kind of atmosphere is there, because they brought quite an atmosphere into East Hartford. As you know, the Guatemalans, if there were 13,000 there, you'd have to say at least 10 or 11,000 were fans of Comunicaciones. And I thought it'd be interesting to just review what Ronnie said, Ronnie Dyla, the head coach of New York City, after the 3-1 win.
Did this feel like a home game tonight?
I think it was actually great to have a good atmosphere in the stadium. We had our supporters there, and we are very grateful that they are coming. We know how hard it is to come so late in the night, and also 2 hour driving from New York. At the same time, we choose a spot that we get a lot of Guatemalan fans, and they created a very, very good atmosphere for the game. So when the result also ended good, we are happy with the night.
Yep. So that's what it was like. I mean, it was somewhat fascinating that it was, and unknown to me till I got there, is that there's a fairly substantial Guatemalan community in the area, and that kind of fed into it as well. Although in the hotel lobby the next day, I met a couple that had driven from Michigan, and had worked. I tweeted it out. It got quite a reaction, and it wasn't necessarily I was trying to condemn New York City supporters for not being there, but they were like, where was everybody? We drove from Michigan.
Yeah, it was remarkable, the atmosphere. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to work alongside you, but I watched it on the TV, and you could hear the atmosphere. They were coming through the speakers. It was fantastic. And as a player, you don't care who the fans are cheering for. You just want there to be a good atmosphere. It lifts you. Whoever they're cheering for, whether it's you or the opposition, you would much rather have 40,000. I know it's 13,000 there. You'd much rather have 13,000 than 300 people just cheering for you. The atmosphere lifted both sides, that's for certain. And certainly, the away side, it lifted the Guatemalan team massively in that second half.
That it did. So New York City, for the first time ever, could advance to the semifinals of the CONCACAF Champions League. They now lead 3-1 on aggregate. As for the Montreal Impact, they are likewise involved in the CONCACAF Champions League. They are coming off a 1-0 loss to Cruz Azul, but that was at Azteca, at elevation, always a difficult place to play for any team from the States or from North America. So, and considering how Cruz Azul bombarded the Montreal goal throughout, the 1-0 result is pretty good for them. And it's time now to bring in Chris Sakonis, who is our opposition analyst for every game. And Chris, the CF Montreal team, and I was talking to Matty a little bit, watching the last half hour of that game against Cruz Azul, and they look pretty good. And Matty looked at what their team sheet is going to look like, and it's like this is a good side, and maybe, just maybe, they can muster up something against this Liga MX side and come away with the advancement. But only 1 win in 5 matches. Chris, how you doing?
Doing good. And I think this is a really interesting CF Montreal team, because if you look at the surface level statistics, there's no better way to lie than with statistics. You get a deceptive picture of what this Montreal team is and what they're capable of. They lost their first 2 MLS regular season matches. They've lost now. They've also lost. They lost the first leg to Santos Laguna before they won 3-0 to take the leg on aggregate 3-1. And then they lost the first leg to Cruz Azul, as you mentioned earlier this week. But they really turned a corner in the last half hour of that game. And that was something that their center back, Kamal Miller, said this week in the press conference was, we felt like we were a lot more comfortable. And, Cruz Azul had them on their heels for the first hour. But, there was a turn in the last 30 minutes. And, he mentioned that in the press conference. Let's take a listen to see what he has to say.
I think in the last minutes of the game, we were more brave on the ball. I think in the first 60, it was night and day compared to how we played in the last 30 of the game. They completely dominated. Reza made a lot of big saves, a lot of last-ditch tackles. It could have gotten away. So yeah, I think we were more brave playing out of the back and taking our extra touches to draw them in closer, and then we were able to get in behind them. So yeah, the last 30 of the game was definitely different, and I felt like we could have snuck a goal or had some better attempts on goal.
Only one shot on target for the game, but that might be those 30 minutes might help lead into what will be a better effort overall against New York City. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that point was interesting because keep in mind, they're also playing in a, Estadio Azteca is a very hostile atmosphere. And I think that, they're in a bit more, still on the road, but they're in a bit more of a favorable situation here. And I think that could really potentially turn into a momentum shift. And that sort of leads into what their head coach, their manager, Wilfred Nancy, said. He said he felt that really in the course of play so far, it's just been a few bad minutes here and there, and that they gave up 4 goals. But, for the most part, he thinks that they're doing what they needed to do to get it done. And here's what he had to say about that.
We played 180 minutes, and we had bad moments for 7 minutes, and we conceded 4 goals. But if I took the 7 minutes on the side, the way we played and the performance was good.
All right. So he's happy with the performance, which you'll hear from coaches sometimes. And of course, if we want to review their 5 matches, they lost at Santos Laguna in the round of 16 CCL 1-0, but then came back and won at home 3-0. So they advanced 3-1 on aggregate. At Orlando, 2-0 defeat. Against Philadelphia at home, they went up a goal and then lost 2-1, and then the match at Cruz Azul. So as we look ahead at this match in particular, Chris and Matty, what do you think coming into this? Who are we going to see? What kind of match might this be?
Well, that's a good question because for a team that hasn't really scored in MLS play in particular, this is a team that is averaging 58% possession. This is a team that, if you look at the passing statistics that MLS provides, they tend to pass forward more than they pass backwards. They're not a team that likes to hold on their back line and, occasionally launch an attack. They like to try and get out and attack you. And the big difference maker here is what happens up front. The top 2 goal scorers from last year's team, Romel Kyoto and Mason Toye, both came back this season. Mason Toye is out with an injury. So that's a good chunk of their scoring production out. So look for Kyoto to be, the go-to guy here. And they also signed Kai Kamara in the offseason. Maybe we see him take a bit of a role as well, coming off the bench in that situation. I'll wait to see. But I think they've got a couple attackers up front. And I think the midfield led by Victor Wanyama and Georgi Mihailovic is also going to be something that New York City FC are going to have to neutralize.
You like Mihailovic, yeah?
Yeah, I do. I think Mihailovic is a good player, good young American player. I think he has to get on the ball in this team. I think he has to make this team tick. Wanyama's a great player, but Wanyama's not somebody who's going to make the game particularly. He's somebody who's going to break the play up. He does a really good job sitting in front of the defence and protecting the defence. I think Chris makes a good point. It's who plays up front. For me, if it's Kamara and Kyoto up front, that's a dangerous front too. It really is. Kyoto obviously was suspended for the last game against Philadelphia because he got sent off in the first MLS game. But he's an exciting player. and he's got a bit of nastiness about him as well. It will be a good battle between Kyoto and Carlins, or whoever else plays alongside Carlins. And certainly Kai Kamara is a real handful as well, and very experienced, and knows where the back of the net is. They're two good goal scorers if they play. Of course, we don't know what the side is just yet.
All right, yeah, we'll have the sides before we are off ourselves here. The New York City FC starting 11 and Montreal. Chris, thank you so much. Look forward to chatting again soon, probably early next week. All right.
All right, Glenn, Matt, take care. Enjoy the game.
Thank you so much. Chris Sakonis reporting for us, the senior at Rutgers University, who was calling a Rutgers University basketball game yesterday at Indianapolis, which Rutgers unfortunately lost. I didn't want to bring that up to Chris because I'm sure it's hurting a bit, as it is my son, who's a season ticket holder. And, I'm a Rutgers guy. What can I tell you? But it's we're back to football.
Yeah.
We're back to soccer. And the one thing it looks like Montreal will do, because they do it consistently, is they'll play 3 at the back.
Yes.
Or 5 at the back. So I asked Ronnie Dyla, part of our pregame show coming up at 12:45, presented by Ford, my one-on-one with Ronnie. This is a portion of that where I asked him about how Montreal plays.
Of course, then they have one less attacking. And it depends on how offensive their fullbacks are. But I feel like it's harder to control the ball in the game with a back 3. And it's easy to be very deep if you meet a good opponent, and sometimes that can be okay, but I think if you're going to win leagues and win things, you have to attack, and you have to dominate games. Cups, of course, you can win through defend yourself to it and be deep and all these things, but I feel like it's tougher in that formation to do it. And there's not many teams around in the world that is winning with a back 3, winning leagues. So it's a Conte maybe have done it a couple of times. We'll see. Chelsea's not doing it this year, So I think you can press higher and get a more advantage if you have more attacking, one more attacking player on the pitch.
That's interesting because New York City played 3 at the back against Comunicaciones, but we don't anticipate that will happen today. In fact, the starting 11 has been presented. But before we get to that, what do you think about his comments that he and this is why I like talking about Ronnie, because he goes globally sometimes just to talk about, what teams are doing what to win their titles,
Yeah, I agree with him. He was a centre half. I was a centre half predominantly. I'd never liked playing in a back 3. I thought that quite often if you were playing against one centre forward, as you will be here, Castellanos will be up against 3 centre halves. I think the 3 of them can almost always think that somebody else is picking the man up, and Castellanos can get in between the 3 centre halves. I also think there's a lot of space down the sides as well, which should be used by Tyler Magna or Santi Rodriguez or Thiago, whoever's playing there. And also, I quite often think as well, especially away from home, when you play with the back 3, it really means the back 5 as well. You quite often just end up with a bank of 5, and then you do have the player less to attack, as Ronnie said. I just don't like the 3, and as Ronnie went on to say, Man United play with Man City, play with the 4. Liverpool play with the 4. Bayern Munich play with the 4. The good teams around the world right now are playing predominantly 4-3-3, which is what Ronnie does.
And here's your starting 11. And a couple of changes. Maxime Chenot out, Thiago Martins in. So it certainly looks like it'll be Andres Jason, as Tavon Gray is out, still injured with the thigh injury. It's not considered serious, but he's been out the last couple of matches. Jason will start on the right, and then it'll be Martins along with Alexander Collins and Malde Amundsen. In the midfield, it's Keaton Parks back and Alfredo Morales. Maxi Morales in front of them, and Santi Rodriguez and Tyler Magno on either side, and then Tati Castellanos up top. So Chenot on the bench.
I'm surprised. I don't know what's going on with the sports science in terms of, has he played too much? Does he need? Is this just a rest, or has he been dropped? I think Chenot and Carlins are probably the 2 best centre halves in the league in terms of their pairing. Maybe not individually. I certainly think Carlins is one of the best, if not the best centre half in the league. But he and Chenot have such a good understanding, with Sean Johnson in behind them and Parks and Morales in front of them. it's surprising for me. But again, I don't know what's going on the training ground. Whether Chenot's got a bit of a knock, I have absolutely no idea.
He went
about
down
that.
heavily a couple of times,
but he does every
in the
game.
match. He does every game. But there was one time he stayed down a little bit longer. It looked like he was more in agony, but nonetheless, Chenot out of the lineup. Thiago Martins now will make his second start as a member of the club, and he's the designated player center back. So that was one area where New York City strengthened themselves. When we look at the transfer market and try to figure out what might happen next, in my one-on-one with Ronnie, part of our pregame, Maddie, and I think you'll find this interesting. A couple of things here. First, it was fullback on the right side.
Yeah.
Tinnerholm's out till July at the earliest. And then you've got Davon Gray, who's out now, but 19 years old. Andres Jason, 20 years old. So young, and he's inexperienced at that position. So I just wondered, about that side of the field in terms of the transfer market. So here's what Ronnie said. Anton Tinnerholm out until July, and David Lee saying recently that he's feels pretty strongly that the club will be able to sign 2 players before the May transfer window closes. So do you expect maybe that you're looking in that position a little bit because just because of the inexperience versus the fact Tinnerholm won't be around?
I'm not sure of that because we have Anton back as well in July. And I think both of the young guys we're talking about is developing all the time. And to bring in right back now will kill both of them. And they are talented, they are local, they are our future. And, we want to bring them into the team. So, and we know we have a top right back also in Anton coming back in July. So a little bit patient we have to be. And we have lost one game in, I can't remember, a long time. So bad it can't be.
Okay, so there's faith in the. I mean, you probably have to really like what Ronnie Dylas said there in terms of faith in the young players, which is one of the challenges to be an MLS coach, right?
To a certain degree, but I also want the best players available to play.
Right.
And Anton Tinnerholm, I'll be very surprised if he's back playing in July. Certainly to anywhere near the level he was at before.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
I don't think it will be this season.
We've heard he's ahead of schedule, but again, they're going to be very careful.
It's such a bad injury for somebody of his age as well. He's not 36 or anything, but once you're in your 30s and you snap your Achilles, that's incredibly hard to come back from. It really is. And certainly to be that assured as well, like he was, he's up and down that right-hand side. I don't see him playing anywhere near to the level he was at until at least 2023.
But Ronnie's concerned about killing those 2 boys. That's you know what he's saying. And I'm.
Well, if they're that mentally weak that you bring in a good right back and they start sulking, that I find that amazing. That particular comment, I understand. Yes, you want to blood the youngsters, but what's wrong with bringing in an older right back? I do know what they're saying though. Tinnerholm is there. They don't want to spend money. We know there's a budget. Sure. We know there's a salary cap. It's tough to spend a lot of money on a right back because if you're going to bring somebody in, he has to be better than Jason. He has to be better than Tavon Gray. And then what happens when Tinnerholm comes back? So I understand the logic, that's for sure.
So where else might they search for transfers? Well, here's the part 2 of Ronnie Dyla discussing the transfer market. If you're looking for assistance or depth, the Tati Castellano situation, there's an expectation he'll be gone in the summer for good reasons. A transfer and the club prospers as well there. Is that a spot maybe that you're looking at closely?
I think that's not from now. We have 2 really good strikers right now, but maybe into the summer we can also play Thales Magno up there. It's of course the right side in the wing that is the most needed position to get something in. And then we'll see if something happens there.
Right wing. And the guy whose name has emerged from the Corinthians, there's a report as recently as this morning saying that there have been discussions between City Football Group and Corinthians about Gabriel Pereira, who is a winger on the right side. And Corinthians, that's a good side in Brazil, yes?
Yeah, that is. Corinthians are a very good side in Brazil. I'm surprised, I must admit. For me, I'd be looking at a centre forward if it was me. He says they've got 2 very good centre forwards.
Well, he's kind of talking about Eber and Tati right now, and then Magno moving into that role in the summer.
But
So that's
Eber's a long way away from being a good centre forward right now. Eber was a good centre forward 2 years ago, and I'm not being disparaging to him. He's coming back from a serious injury. He is nowhere near the player that he was. I don't see it at the moment. And Castellanos, I'm surprised he hasn't gone. I'm sure he will go in the summer. So yeah, I'd be looking at centre forward. Right wing, I'd have thought Santi Rodriguez, Thiago can play there, Titus Magno can play there. But look, that's why David Lee gets paid and why Ronnie Dyler gets paid. And I just get paid to sit here and talk about it. If it was me, I'd be buying a centre forward, that's for certain. With the expectation that Castellanos leaves.
No, you're in a comfortable position here.
I know,
Matty
it's
Lawrence.
much easier here.
It's very good. Hey, I wanted to close with one thing. If New York City supporters are watching this, I'm sure a bulk of the people that are viewing are supporters of the club, so they're not going to want to see Jesse Marsh's face. But I thought I wanted to play this because, and I want to know if you get the same impression. I want you to pick out the dig on Patrick Vieira. So Jesse Marsh is now coaching Jack Harrison at Leeds. And in a recent press conference in England before a Leeds match, the 7-0 Hudson River Derby match here at Yankee Stadium was brought up. And this is how Jesse Marsh responded. Jesse Marsh was the coach for Red Bulls at the time, Patrick Vieira for New York City FC.
He reminded me that was his first game. And I said, okay, we won't talk about it. I think that's a pretty famous game in the history of the league in MLS. And certainly one that we had a good match plan and played very, very well. But I knew, I'd watched Jack in university, and we had considered trying to find a way to draft him when I was at the New York Red Bulls. All these things might be a little bit foreign to the way football works here in England, but the way it works in the U.S., I knew who he was, and we would have really liked to have him at the New York Red Bulls, but unfortunately the enemy had taken him. But it's nice to be on the same team with him now.
Okay. So did you catch the dig? What do you think? We had a good match plan.
Yes,
we had a good match plan. So I think, and almost everything Jesse Marsh says is calculated. By the way, I like Jesse Marsh.
So do I.
He was very welcoming when he was at Red Bulls. I used to go to their training all the time, closer to my home. Always welcome there. And but he when he can get a dig in, man, he'll do it.
Yeah, he does. He's really good. I like him. He's incredibly eloquent. But again, it's a results-based industry. It wasn't too good at RB Leipzig, and it's not going too well at Leeds. And
he
that's
says
not
he's
me
not sleeping. Yeah,
I'm sure he's not. And that's not me. I'm not having a dig at him at all because they're two very, very difficult jobs. But I very, very much enjoy what he does as a coach, and really when he talks and is interviewed afterwards. But you don't get any points for interviews.
Check this out. So this is someone who follows me on Twitter, but he's a New York City supporter, more importantly. And I don't know Joseph, but here he is at base camp at Mount Everest, and he's got his NYCFC MLS Cup Champions hoodie on. Pretty cool. Took a picture of it. So, Joseph, I don't know if you'll hear this or if somebody in the audience knows you and can alert you, but I would love to know, did you keep going? I wasn't sure if you stopped at base camp because climbing is in my family. I did it as a youth, and check this out. That is my daughter, Morgan Crooks.
Oh, wow.
Look at her there. This is at a place called Indian Creek in New Mexico, and or is it Utah? One or the other, because she's been climbing a bow. But that's so I have a great appreciation for those things. I like all those mountain movies.
Did he stop at base camp or did he go all the way? That's the thing.
There he is. Joseph, let us know, man. Let us know. And I'm at Glenn Crooks. He's at Matty J. Lawrence. We've got a broadcast coming up beginning at 12:45 on the New York City FC Network. It's New York City, their home opener, a celebration of their MLS Cup prior. It's New York City against CF Montreal. Both sides looking for their first win in the MLS League play in 2022. I'm Glenn Crooks, Matty Lawrence. Great to have you with us, and enjoy the game, everybody.